Good day, everyone, especially Sir Nixon, and for those people who will watch our recording video. Before I proceed to our presentation, I will just introduce myself. I am Rin Avrylle J. Cafe, one of the members of Group 3, Batch 1. So, our topic is all about employment, unemployment, and underemployment. So, I will discuss the meaning of those three words. First is employment. It signifies the state of anyone who is doing what, under circumstances, he or she most wants to do. It's also an agreement between an employer and an employee to provide certain services on the job to accomplish works in return for compensation. So, in simple words, this employment is those people who have a work that align with their abilities and skills and for their course. Next one is unemployment. Unemployment or joblessness is the situation of actively looking for employment but not being currently employed. Self-employment but not currently available for work during the reference period. So unemployment it is also called self-employment. So unemployment basically those are people who doesn't have any job, who doesn't have any work, but then they're still looking for their work or job that's suitable to their abilities and skills. Last but not the least, the underemployment. So underemployment, it occurs when one does not have a job that is full-time. It is also a situation in which a worker is employed but not in the desired capacity, whether in terms of compensation, hour, or level of skill and experiences. So basically, underemployment or those people who have a work but then their work is not aligned or suitable to their skills or abilities. Maybe the reason why they they still need a job, they still need to help their family for financial problems, that's why they have to work. So unemployment and underemployment is the two most problem of our country or issues of our country. So why unemployment and underemployment? So many, as of now, many graduates, doctors, teachers, engineers, scientists, or any courses are unemployed or working underemployed. Due to unemployment and underemployment, we are wasting our country's human resource, our country's um, essential or our country's human resources, that those people who are unemployed, who are underemployed, that they are need to be employed. Why? Because our economy is falling now. So these are the two problems that our country facing now. Next, we will discuss the unemployment, underemployment, starting with the former president, Mrs. Corazon Aquino, to our present president now, which is Rodrigo Roa Duterte. And our next presenter is Miss Buan.
Thank you, Miss Rain. I'm Angel Buan, and for today, I will discuss to you the unemployment and employment during the administration of Miss Corazon Aquino. To start this, from 1987 to 1991, the employment rate increased by about 4% annually and slightly outpacing the 3.4% labor force growth during the period. And in the year of 1987 and 1988 was the higher year-on-year increasing of the employment was recorded, in the which rose by 6.3% and 5.8% respectively. And when the slowdown in the economy compounded by natural calamities and also the US military pullout, it caused a downtrend in employment starting in the year of 1989. So, the distribution of the employed by major industry group showed that the bulk of the employment was still in the agricultural sector, and it has a employment growing at an annual rate of 5.5%. And in terms of the unemployment rate, um, I read article in the inquiry.net that the unemployment was worsened during the administration of Ms. Corazon Aquino first year in the office because to 7% in the first quarter of the year 1986 to 10.2% in the year of 1987. And from Malacanang.gov.ph that the implementation of the various long and em- short-term strategies, local and overseas employment resulted in the reduction of the country's unemployment rate of 11.8% in the year of 1986 to 10.6% in the year of 1991. And because of the unemployment problem, the government during the year 1986 to 1991 create a project or program to address this problem in the matter of unemployment. So one of the projects of the government was local job placement through the Department of Labor and Employment or DOLE, which is the Network of Job Exchange Center. In the year of 1986, the total number of placement was 20,637, and in the year of 1991, 177,420 total of placement, which have an average growth of 48.5%. And also, in the year of 1990, the DSWD or the Department of Social Welfare and Development organized 317 livelihood association, which serve both as a credit and social development organization. And this is estimated to provide gainful employment and alternative sources of livelihood to some 70,000 people annually. And the total of 41,852 people was benefit from this program in the year of 1986 and 1991. And lastly, the another notable program that implemented of the government was the Integrated Livelihood Program or ILP. This program is not only provide a income generating activities, but also it helps to raise the quality of life in the regions that regions that lagging behind in the development. Um, in case of overseas employment, the job placement overseas is grow in the average of 9.6% in the period of 1986 and 1991. In spite of Gulf War, the 615,019 total of workers were deployed to overseas jobs in the year of 1991. And the 1991 is known as the highest government the highest government overseas deployment in history. So the next presenter is Miss Bondoc.
Hi everyone and hi Sir Nixon. I will discuss Fidel V. Ramos' era from 1992 to 1998. On June 30, 1992, GNP growth stood at 0.48%, unemployment was at 10.7%, and underemployment at 22.1%. The crippling power crisis had arrested industrial growth and caused layoffs. Incomes were at a low, and the inflation rate of 18.66% had hit hard at the purchasing power of workers. The incidence of poverty by that time should have gone down from more than 50% to 30%. The economy should have grown by an average of 7.6%. Investment should have risen from 22% of gross national product to 30%. Unemployment should have gone down from 10.3% to 6.6%. and more 5 million less than 1990, number of unemployed, down by 1.5 million rate, down from 13.3% to 18.9% in July. Services leads gains in employment in 1998 July over July 1997. Employment in agriculture recovers from April 1998 fall. Employment in industry declines in July 1998, increasing the unemployment rate to 8.9% from 8.7% in July 1997. As of January 1995, our labor force stood at 27.5 million, up by 1.9% from a year ago. Of this, 25.1 million were employed. There were 521,000 new entrants in the workforce. Job generation produced 427,000 new jobs. Most significant about the new labor and employment figure is the way the economy is changing. Since January last year, 1.2 million wage and salary positions were filled in the place of self-employed and unpaid family work. The labor market share of these protected workers increased by 3.9%. The biggest gainer among the sector has been manufacturing, which grew by 24.2%. New jobs in manufacturing rose to 165,000 in January 1995 compared to 25,000 a year earlier, or a rise of 560%. And that's all. Thank you.
Good day, Sir Nixon and everyone. I'm Celine Bernal. On the graphs below, employment, unemployment, and underemployment rate is shown during Joseph Estrada's era. This is the Philippine Labor Force Survey for July 1999. From this survey, first, the labor force is 1.12 million higher than in July 1998, taking the number of jobs up to 1.2 million and reducing the number of unemployed by 79,000. Next, from July 1998 to July 1999, the agriculture sector leads to a job increase of 6.8%. And then unemployment rose by 3.5% in services and by 0.3% in the industry. After that, the unemployment rate is down to 8.4% from 8.9% a year earlier. And lastly, the underemployment rate for the past 4 quarters remained at the level of 22 to 23%. Next slide, please. Then this one is the Philippine Labor Force Survey for July 2000. From this survey, first, the labor force in July 2000 decreased by a slight 25,000 or by 0.1% compared to July last year. Next, employed persons decreased by 877,000 or 3% to 28.2 million this year from 29 million last year. And then agriculture jobs dropped by 10.1% to 10.6 million from 11.8 million a year earlier. Next, the employed in industry declined by 1.8%. And then services jobs increased by 3% to 13.1 million in July 2000 from 12.8 million July 1999. After that, unemployment rate was up at 11.1% from 8.4% last year. And last, underemployment rate, however, moved down to 21.4% from 22.3% a year earlier. And that's all. For the next presenter is Mr. Vargas.
Good day, Sir Nixon. Good day, everyone. As per the legacy of President Arroyo starting to 2001 to 2010, the following data are some example of analysis within her presidential time. Employment growth has been strongest in the service sector. Employed person increased by 354,000 or 1.3% from 27.7 million in January last year to 28.1 million this year. In agriculture, employment in January 2001 was short by 370,000 or 3.5% of the January 2000 level. In industry, employment increased by 277,000 or 6.3%. In services, the increase was 450,000 or 3.5%. As for the legacy of President Arroyo, in her last State of Nation address, she proudly announced that her government created, create 8 million jobs for the past 8 years. We generate 8 million jobs, she proclaimed an average of a million per year, much more than at any other time. In 2020, in 2001, she promised to create 1 million jobs every year. Based on the Labor Department and Statistic Office computation of 8 million jobs for the past 8 years, she has achieved this. In 2004, however, she set another target for jobs creation, 10 million jobs per year 2004 to 2010 term. Since then, her government has created only 4.9 million in the domestic market. The next presenter is Miss Althea Janine.
Thank you. So, up for the details on employed persons numbering to 29.2 million increased by 7.2% in April 2001 from its level last month. Employment in agriculture rose by 10.9% to 10.9 million from 9.8 million a year ago. In the industry, employment was up by 244,000 or by 5.4%. For the services, employment increased by 637,000 or by 5.0%. For unemployment rate was down to 13.3% from 13.9% last year. And for the underemployment rate, it is decreased by 7.2 percentage points from 24.7% in April last year to 17.5%. Within this in mind, of the 33.6 million person in the labor force, there were those who were employed and those who were not. Employed person in April 2001 increased by 2.0 million by 7.2% to 29.2 million from 27.2 million. The corresponding employment rate also increased from 86.4% to 86.7%. Employment in industrial sector increased to 4.8 million in the April 2001 from 4.5 million a year ago. This could be due to the increases posted in manufacturing, which include 154,000 and construction for 119,000. The increase in employment was brought about by the increase in the number of wages and salary workers, on account workers, and unpaid family workers, where the wages and salary workers also increased by 289,000. For the next slide, for the unemployment rate. For the past 26 years, unemployment rate reveals a downward trend with the seasonal patterns with a major fall between the years of 2005 to 2006 and all the time of 502 persons, accounting for 15% of the total unemployment population was recorded in the second quarter of 2004, brought by the 1.9 million new entrants that joined the labor force, including the seasonal influx of new graduates and vocational students seeking work that exceeding the 3.6% or 1.1 million employment generating during the quarter 2004. The unemployment has remained high in the Philippines at almost twice the level of neighboring countries despite relatively fast employment growth in the past decade. Employment growth was not sufficient to reduce unemployment because of rapid population growth and increased labor force participation. This report shows that the Philippine employment growth and the unemployment declines were positively correlated with the real growth and to a lesser extent negatively with the real minimum wage. The key policy implications are that higher economic growth and moderation of increases in the real minimum wage are required to reduce unemployment. Lastly, Mr. Vargas.
Employed person who express the desire to have additional hour of work in their present job or to have additional job or to have a new job long with longer working hour are considered underemployed. The number of underemployed person in January 2000 2010 was estimated at 7.1 million, placing the current underemployment rate 19.7%. More than half, 57.0% of the total underemployed were reported as visibly underemployed or working less than 40 hours during the reference week. Those working for 40 hours or more accounted for 41.3% of the total underemployed. Next slide.
Underemployment and underemployment are the Philippines' most important problems and the key indicators of the weaknesses of the economy. Today, around for 4 million workers, about 12% of the labor force are unemployed, and another 5 million, around 17% of those employed, are underemployed. The social cause of this mass unemployment range from the income losses to severe social and psychological problems resulting from not having a job and feeling insecure about the future. Overall, it causes a massive social inefficiency. Going on, may I call the next presenter, Ms. Catalan.
Good day to all of you. I will discuss the administration of former President Benigno Aquino III in the year of 2010 to 2016. The labor force who were employed in 2010 was 92.7%, and it is estimated to 36 million person. For unemployed, there are 7.3%, and it's estimated to 2.9 million person. For underemployed, there are 18.7%, and estimated to 6.8 million. For the year 2011, their employment rate 93 93%, which is 37.2 million people. For unemployment, there are 7%, which is 0.8 million person. For underemployment rate, there are 19.3%, which is 7.2 million person. For the year 2012, their employment rate 93%, which is 37.2 million person. For unemployment rate, there are 7%, which is 2.8 million person. For underemployment rate, there are 20%, which is 8 million person. For the year 2013, their employment rate 92.7%, which is 37 million person. For an unemployment rate, there are 7.3%, which is 3 million person. For underemployment, there are 19.8%, which is 7.5 million person. For the year 2014, for employment rate, there are 93.2%, which is 37.3 million person. For unemployment rate, 6.8%, which is 2.7 million person. Underemployment rate, there are 18.4%, which is 6.9 million person. For the year 2015, for the employment rate, there are 93.7%, which is 37.8 million. For unemployment, there are 6.3%, which is 2.6 million. And underemployment, there are 18.5%, which is 7.2 million person. For the year 2016, there are employment rate 94.5%, which is 38.5 million person. For unemployment, there are 5.5%, which is 2.4 million person. For underemployment rate, there are 18.3%, which is 7.5 million person. The year 2016 also has the highest rate of employed person and the lowest rate of unemployed person during the term of Aquino III. Aquino III praised the Department of Labor and Employment for the minimal labor strikes in his 5 years in office. Aquino accredited Labor Secretary Celine for the gains in the labor sector, calling her pastora ng gabinete. And the next presenter is Miss Cathy.
Thank you, Jhuanna. For Mr. Rodrigo R. Duterte, 2016 and now present, the employment rate analysis, as you can see in our presentation, employment rate in the Philippines increased to 91.27% in the fourth quarter of 2020 from 90.4% in the third quarter of 2020. So as you can see, starting with 2016 to 2020, the employment rate are increasing and also changes. Next is the unemployment rate analysis. Um, Unemployment, as I've said earlier, refers to the share of the labor force that is without work but able for and seeking employment. Philippines unemployment rate for 2019 was 2.15% and is also declined with 0.19% from 2018. Next, in 2020, 2018 was 2.34% and is also declined 21% from 2017. Philippines unemployment rate for 2017 was 2.55% and is also declined by 0.16 from 2016. Lastly, from 2016 was 2.71%. It also declined 0.36 from 2015. Next is underemployment rate. In 2018, about 16% of employees in the Philippines were underemployed. The underemployment rate in the country has steadily increased over the last 10 years. Since 2010 until now, or 2011 until now, the underemployment rate are increasing. In our current economy, we all know that underemployment is prevalent because many educated and skilled people are not employed in a capacity that they desire. And lastly, our current analysis in our employment, underemployment. The country's unemployment rate in October 2020 was estimated at 8.7%. It is equivalent to 3.8 million unemployed Filipinos who are 15 years old and over. This rate is the lowest since April this year, although is still higher than the 4.6% in the same period a year ago. Underemployment rate further declined in October 2020 at 14.4% from the rates in April and July 2020 at 8.9% and 17.3% respectively. However, this underemployment rate is still higher than the October 2019 rate at 12.8%. So we all know that we are in the midst of pandemic, so the unemployment and underemployment rate are still increasing now. So that's all for today's discussion and for this reporting. Thank you for listening to our report.